If you remember endlessly bowing to Buckbeak, this weird-looking serious black dog, and Harry having his literal soul sucked out, then you grew up playing Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. But which one? Because there were 3 completely different versions made by different developers, and in this video we're going to compare them. If you've seen the first 2 videos in my series, then you'll know that Warner Brothers and EA did something unusual for the first 2 Harry Potter movies. They released 5 completely different tie-in games. A version for PC, PlayStation 1, the 6th generation consoles, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. By the time Prisoner of Azkaban hit cinemas in 2004, they scaled it down to just the consoles, PC, and Game Boy Advance. So let's start with the PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox version. The game starts on the train to Hogwarts. The character models have been updated from the Chamber of Secrets, but they still retain a bit of their stylized design from the last game. I think this was the perfect blend for the graphics at the time. The characters were still able to be really expressive, unlike the later PS2 games where they aimed for more realistic character models who kind of ended up looking like mannequins. The train sequence is used as a tutorial section. You progress through each compartment, first battling the Book of Monsters, then Malfoy, and then...
You'll see your bone turn to ash with my bright red flame blade!
Whoops, sorry, wrong franchise. Call me picky, but I think they could have spent a little more time on Malfoy's combat AI.
You couldn't hit the side of a barn, Weasley. Harry.
Look, we're all having so much whimsical fun. I hope this never ends.
A few moments later.
Oh shit. Talk about a 180 turn. 1 second Harry's running around with a big pumpkin head, and the next a Dementor is trying to suck out his soul. Look, the developers actually went out of their way to show Harry's soul being sucked out. Jeez, and I thought dirty Quidditch in the last game was brutal. Lupin then saves the day, and the trio arrive at Hogwarts. Also, get a load of Harry and Ron's hairstyles in this game. These lads look like they're about to start a pop-punk band. The developers seemed really concerned that you'd lose track of your objective. So if you stand still for even a second, Ron starts subtly reminding you of your objective.
Come on, show me the Folio Bruti. Come on then. We're not going anywhere until you've shown me the Folio Bruti.
Oh Jesus, Ron can really take a flipendo to the face. He must have that Homer Simpson gene. Just like the Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets for the PlayStation 2, this game borrows a lot from Zelda, mainly the dungeons.
Another puzzle? Oh, great.
Something tells me Ron is going to be way more at home by the time we get to the Deathly Hallows games. So it's clear this game was built on the Chamber of Secrets framework, but it does introduce a few new gameplay elements, the biggest being the co-op feature, which allows you to switch between the trio at any time, so that's where GTA 5 got it from. The co-op system is a nice addition. It gives a fresh angle to the puzzles. Each character has specific spells they learn throughout the game and skills they can use to navigate the dungeons, although some of the skills are a little odd. For example, only Harry knows how to jump. Ron is able to sniff out invisible doors and find dung bombs in bookshelves. And what about Hermione's ability? Can she conjure up some complicated, intricate spell? Or maybe use the time turner to slow down time like in Prince of Persia? Nope, she can crawl through small spaces. And that's it. Also, every dungeon will have a giant, heavy object that requires all 3 characters to lift it, or some heavy gates that the 2 boys have to lift for Hermione to get through. These developers must have been watching a lot of World's Strongest Man during the making of this game. And with so much effort put into the co-op mechanic, I'm surprised they didn't make a local multiplayer version, especially considering it was such a big part of the Lord of the Rings games, which also came out around the same time and were also EA games. I guess they decided to save it for the next game. There are other gameplay elements, like being able to fly Hedwig to solve puzzles, and of course plenty of sneaking around hallways.
Come on, show me the Folio Bruti.
And unfortunately, the annoying pixies from the last game make a return. But this time you also get these things called doxies, which are way bigger and way more annoying because they can poison you. I must say, the animators did some really good work on this version, adding little moments like this one.
I'm on my way!
Unfortunately, the same can't be said about the NPC AI. For some reason, the NPCs in this game just can't seem to stand still. The castle interior reuses some elements from the previous games, but they've been reworked to reflect Prisoner's darker tone. And the outside has been reworked completely, using a lot of the designs from the third movie, which completely redesigned the castle and the grounds. Hagrid returns, and unfortunately he doesn't look like his PlayStation 1 counterpart. He actually looks like Robbie Coltrane this time, or more like the Robbie Coltrane suit worn by the Double. At this point, I can do an entire video comparing every version of Hagrid from these games. Whoa, bloody hell Hagrid, you're spry for a big fella. In this game you're able to both ride and fly Buckbeak around the Hogwarts grounds. Having to bow to Buckbeak every time you want to get on is a nice touch, but it quickly gets old, especially when you're in a hurry. And look, flying Buckbeak is great, but unfortunately the trade-off is that there's no broomsticks or Quidditch of any kind in this game. I guess EA really wanted you to buy the Quidditch World Cup game they released the previous year. You can also do these challenges with Buckbeak where he has to fly around a flock of bats, eating them. Hey, I'll take it. At least they're not using the Quidditch rings from the last couple of games. All three of the playable characters are able to ride Buckbeak, but this can end up being a little cumbersome. For example, you fly all the way to the other side of Hogwarts with Harry, only to realize that only Hermione can use this spell, and she is all the way back at Hagrid's hut. And even when she does catch up to you, you'll get this.
We have to find Buckbeak. Let's go.
Hermione, he's right here.
Hermione, can you squeeze through there?
Hermione, are you gonna get up or are you actually dead? Because this thing is really heavy. Oh god, this dungeon with all these doxies. And God forbid Hermione gets bit by one of them, she just won't shut up about it.
I need some antidote. This poison's really affecting me. I've been poisoned. I need some antidote.
Okay, what's next?
Professor Lupin sent me a note. He's going to teach me how to fend off Dementors.
A few moments later.
This level still gives me PTSD, just having to bounce from one platform to another, back and forth and back and forth. Meanwhile, the Dementors are slowly creeping up behind you. And Harry's technique for escaping the Dementors is flailing around like one of those inflatable tube guys. In terms of plot, this game kind of expects you to have already seen the movie or read the book. It covers the major beats from the story, but it focuses more on learning spells and collecting ingredients for potions. It actually feels more like a school year. You're going around doing lessons, and every now and then you're reminded that there's an escaped convict loose in Hogwarts. What? What's that? Sirius Black wants to kill you, Harry? That's terrible, but we really need to get some flying seahorses for Snape's potion class. Also, sometimes the stairs just forget to come down. It's nice running around the reworked castle grounds, but it's quite easy to get lost, especially considering that all these bloody doors are just painted on textures.
Now to go to the Quidditch Stadium.
I'd like to, but unfortunately the Quidditch Stadium is just a two-dimensional texture in this game. See, right over there. I probably do prefer Chambers' approach of just being able to get on a broom anywhere instead of going all the way to get Buckbeak each time. But hey, at least they tried something new. Okay, so what about the end of the game? Well, it unravels pretty much like the movie and book. The trio go to visit Hagrid, think that they see Buckbeak's execution, Ron then goes after Scabbers and gets dragged inside the Whomping Willow by Sirius Black. Harry and Hermione then follow, and oh, look at that, there's a big fuck-off dungeon underneath the Whomping Willow, with fire-breathing salamanders and doxies.
This poison's really affecting me. I need some antidote.
Nah, you'll be alright. After you clear the dungeon, you run into Sirius Black and Lupin, and you get the whole exposition about their past and that Sirius is actually a good guy. They leave the Shrieking Shack. Both Lupin and Sirius transform off-screen in this version. I guess they spent all of their money animating the trio. Harry fights the Dementors, then ends up in the hospital wing, then they go back in time to fight them from behind. Excuse me, coming through, thank you.
You truly are your father's son, Harry.
Thanks, Jesus. And that's it for the main campaign. You know, I think the console version of this game should actually be called Hermione Granger and the Prisoner of Azkaban. With the absence of Quidditch, she has the most playtime out of the trio. She learns the most useful spells, like turning water into ice, turning statues into dragons, and reversing time to fix objects. Ron, on the other hand, has a glorified flashlight. Hermione also does a really sizable chunk of the dungeons in this game, and she can fly Buckbeak just like Harry. Oh, and the PlayStation 2 version also has iToy support. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my iToy to work, but this tutorial video kind of sums it up. Just like every other iToy game, it involves you whacking the shit out of things on the screen. So that's it for the console version of Azkaban. Overall, it's a pretty good game. I hate to sound like a broken record, but the absence of Quidditch does make you realize how dungeon heavy it is. Most of the gameplay either has you going through dungeons or collecting ingredients for Snape's potion class. But there's still enough mini-games and extra stuff to collect around Hogwarts, and I definitely give it props for trying something new with the co-op mechanic. Okay, next up we have the PC version. Here we also start on the train, only this time the creepy Sirius dog is watching them. Gameplay-wise, this version also borrows a lot from its predecessor. Just like Chamber of Secrets for the PC, it essentially has basic third-person shooter controls, but you can only cast spells when hovering over a specific marker, and the game decides what spell you cast depending on the object. The PC version also introduces co-op elements, but you can't switch between the trio on the fly. Instead, the game decides when you get to play as each specific character. You don't have to lift any heavy shit this time around. Instead, the characters just have to cast the same spell at the same time. The train sequence is also used as a tutorial section in this version, although Ron doesn't have to drag Harry's body this time. Instead, he has to charm objects to act as obstacles in the Dementor's way. With that done, we're off to Hogwarts. This game also reuses bits of the castle from the Chamber of Secrets, but it's been updated quite a bit. The school grounds have been redesigned to align with the third movie, but not as much as the console versions. This version also focuses on puzzle-based dungeons to learn new spells. The PC and console versions share most of the same spells, but the presentation is often different. Wizard crackers are carried over from the last game, as are the trading cards.
I've got a rare one for sale. I'll buy that.
Fred and George's underground illegal business also makes a return.
Welcome to our shop.
Wow.
Afraid you don't have enough pumpkin pasties to buy that?
Oh, come on, why can't I just jinx them and steal the items like in Grand Theft Auto? Also, Jeremy Soule really composed his ass off for the pause screen music. You go to adjust the brightness and BAM! Ron, you're pointing in the wrong direction, mate. Unfortunately, you can't fly Buckbeak around Hogwarts in this version. His section is kind of relegated to a mini-game where you fly through bats. Wait, hold on. Is that a bald patch on Harry's head? Or is that just my graphics card? I'm sure they have some kind of a spell for that, right? Like Minoxidilius? Oh, I guess not.
Ron, get ready to use your Carpe Retractum spell when we've worn him down.
What the fuck is she on about? You know, I've realized why they have such stiff face animations. They spent all of their budget on these transformations. And speaking of which, in this version, Hermione is able to transfigure statues into living creatures like dragons and rabbits. This mechanic is similar to Flying Hedwig in the console versions. Expecto Patronum actually requires a bit of skill. You have to time it just right to cast the spell properly, otherwise you just end up with this. I have to say, the voice actor for Ron in this version was really working for his paycheck. Okay, it's time for Professor Flitwick's class. Interesting note, Flitwick still has his old design. So what's Flitwick going to teach us? Something silly and harmless, right? The swish and flick. Holy shit, you freeze the lizard and then shatter it.
Fatality.
Overall, I kind of prefer the dungeons in this game to the console versions, maybe because you don't have to keep flipping back between the spells, or maybe because the game knows when to throw in nice little action stages like this. The end game sequence follows the plot, just like the console versions, only this time you actually get to see Lupin and Sirius transform. There's no need to drag Sirius, you just take on the Dementors straight away. Harry and Hermione then end up in the hospital ward. They then go to rescue Buckbeak, and by rescue I mean do a bunch of puzzles. Harry then takes on the Dementors again and unleashes the fattest Expecto Patronum ever. You then rescue Sirius.
How can I ever thank?
Go!
And that's it. Well, kind of. You see, this version doesn't actually end here. No, each of the trio actually have to do their end-of-year exams, and then you go and see Dumbledore and McGonagall.
Glad to see you three survived your final exam.
Survived? What kind of a crooked school are you running, old man? What happened to the whimsical Dumbledore from the first game?
Huggy, watty Hogwarts.
So yeah, you can't technically complete this game until you get all of these achievements. And look, if you're into collecting and getting 100% in games, then this is the version for you. There are mini games, portraits, wizard cards, and a bunch of other challenges. Overall, I would say this version definitely simplifies and streamlines the gameplay compared to the console games. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it actually gives a much faster pace to the gameplay, which I kind of enjoyed a bit more. Okay, and finally we come to the handheld version. If you've seen the first two videos in this series, then you'll know that the Game Boy Color version, developed by Kryptonite Games, was a surprise standout from the pack. Their Philosopher's Stone game was a turn-based RPG with great animations and a very faithful approach to the story. Chamber of Secrets improved on every aspect of its predecessor, adding things like party combat and an improved battle system that made it a really good classic RPG in its own right. And so, Kryptonite Games were given the green light to develop the Game Boy Advance version of Prisoner of Azkaban. So, how did they do? Well, great! This game continues to build on the established formula and improve on its predecessor in every way. Obviously, the jump from Game Boy Color to Advance meant the graphics would be way better, but you can see the devs really push the console. The overworld is vibrant, with every character having a fluid walk cycle. Just look at the little details like McGonagall's transformation, or Hagrid's beard bobbing up and down. The battle animations have also been improved, taking a more over-the-shoulder perspective akin to the Pokemon games, but Pokemon wouldn't have this fluidity of animation until Diamond and Pearl 3 years from now on a different console. The art is great. They utilize the Game Boy Advance's wider color palette and higher resolution to add more detail to the sprites. As a comparison, here is the Game Boy Advance Harry and the Game Boy Color Harry in debug mode. This version follows a similar blueprint to the console and PC games, utilizing the co-op mechanic where each of the three characters have unique spells. The new spells are learned through dungeon challenges, and the spells are used both in the overworld to navigate through obstacles and during battles, similar to HMs in the old Pokemon games. Also, each of the characters has a special move. My favorite is Hermione, who can lecture the party. One of my only critiques of the Game Boy Color games was the strange design of Hogwarts. Thankfully, the trippy statues and paintings are gone in this version, and the entire castle has been redesigned to fit the movie's aesthetic. The character dialogue icons have also been redesigned, and they look a lot more realistic. But to be honest, the results here are a bit mixed. Some characters look good, some not so much, like poor Ron. You can technically fly Buckbeak in this version using this Mode 7 type minigame that reminds me of Pilot Wings. Just like the other Kryptonite games, this one follows the story closely, all the way down to the specific order the characters walk in after they catch Peter Pettigrew. As I said, it's really faithful to the story. There's a little Dementor minigame, Harry and Hermione go back in time, then you fight the werewolf Lupin and fly Buckbeak to rescue Sirius. The end is the only part that slightly deviates from the book. You have to fight Malfoy to rescue Sirius, but it's not really a big deal. I guess they felt like they needed one final boss at the very end. So there we have it, all three versions of Prisoner of Azkaban. And yes, there aren't as many versions as the first two installments, but I think this is a case of quality over quantity. I would say all three of these are really good games. Personally, I think you can play any of them and have a great time. But what do you guys think? Which one of these three games was your favorite? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know. Prisoner of Azkaban also marked the end of an era. This was the last time EA let multiple developers create totally different games. Going forward, the PC release would be a port of the console games. We'd still get different handheld games, but unfortunately none of them would reach the level of the Kryptonite games. And the series would also switch genres a few times, from multiplayer-focused action to free roam exploration, and finally first-person shooter with wands. So let me know if you'd like me to make videos about those games in the future. Thank you all for watching, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.